ladies and gentlemen, very warmly welcome to the first ever Nordic Day in Washington, D.C., and to the Finnish Embassy in Washington. And while you are here, please have a look around also not only from the point of view of climate change, but also from the point of view of architecture and art. We have an art exhibition here ongoing, and it is called, by coincidence, not by design, 9 Seasons. There are 9 artists by the stairs. Please open on week until mid. As we discussed between the Nordic embassies that we should really have this kind of a Nordic Day, it was not difficult to come up with the subject matter that would be of interest to all of us. It was climate change, and that was because we are all active as far as combating climate change is concerned, but also because we have a very high sense of urgency as far as this issue is concerned. Act on, and it is a top priority for all the Nordic countries. According to the World Economic Forum, we, the Nordic countries, are best prepared and learn from other countries. I mentioned architecture, and this embassy is 20 years old. About 5 years ago, or a little bit more, we started to invest in making this embassy not only beautiful, but also energy efficient and environmentally friendly. And you are in the, I think it is the only embassy in Washington, D.C., which has a platinum certificate from Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design LEED. According to my knowledge, the only other embassy in the world which has a platinum LEED certificate is the US Embassy. To make into consideration purchasing policy, we tackling and take it seriously. Reach our to walk to the office. But as any actions related to environmentally clever, but it is also economically clever. Namely, we are saving $150,000 per year in our energy costs. Compared to mid-2000, when we started the project, we use 6% less energy and 65%. Well, this is very topical and very important. Just to give one figure, by 2050, population in the world will be living in cities. So it will become crucial how cities will provide services to the citable manner. Today we are going to be acquainted with projects from Nordic cities. We are going to hear about become self-sufficient in renewable energy in cities. Can a city be carbon neutral? What is an eco-city. They sit how to keep the inhabitants of cities happy in the new situation where there are all kinds of requirements related to our environment. There will be examples which I think show how small cities, and a little bit bigger ones as well, can make a big difference. How they can introduce more sustainable energy policies in practice, how they can cut emissions. I think and I hope that this session will be inspiring to you all, and I would like to thank very much the cities and their representatives and the projects which will be introduced. And I would also like to thank very much the staff of all the 5 Nordic embassies who have been putting this Nordic Day together for coming here. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this afternoon, Mr. Sam Adams, who is former mayor of Portland, Oregon, and who is now director of the US Climate Initiative at the World Resources Institute. In this position, he leads the Institute's efforts to analyze and develop new policies, build political will, and support coalitions that encourage the transition of the United States to a strong, low-carbon economy. With his vast experience related to green cities, we are proud to have him as our keynote speaker and moderator of this afternoon. Thank you for being with us today, Mr. Adams, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, and all the ambassadors from the Nordic countries. It's a real honor to be here today to say a few words up front, to ground and frame a bit of the conversation, and then moderate some great panelists. I said yes when I was asked quite quickly to moderate, because I feel like it's I'm paying back. I'm paying back because I have visited not all, but most of the Nordic countries as a chief of staff to the mayor of Portland, Oregon, and then as a member of the elected member of the city council, and then as mayor. So I've been stealing the best ideas from this part of the world for at least 20 years. So thank you. And hopefully today is a little bit of paying back. We gather together weeks away from the gathering for the United Nations Climate Summit. And I think we can gather today with renewed sense of cautious hope, cautious optimism about what's possible. Just yesterday, according to the International Energy Agencies, the 150 countries that have put together INDCs, or local commitments to the global commitment of reducing carbon emissions, represent 90% of the global economic activity and nearly 90% of the global energy-related greenhouse gases. This has never been done before, and we should take collective inspiration about how much more than that we can do. If all the countries met the goals that they have pledged, then we would see, according to the International Energy Agency, a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions to 2/3, and by 2030, ramping up to 2/3, up to 2030, where it would be getting close to no further growth. So by 2030, everybody meets the pledges that they have made voluntarily. By 2030, we will have stopped increasing carbon emissions. That's amazing. That's the hopeful news. That's the news that should keep us going. However, the challenge is that those pledges, of course, fall short of what is required for a major course correction to limit temperature increases by 2 degrees Celsius. It is a but it is a good time to be gathering to talk about cities and what they are doing, because it has been at the city level around the globe. I can speak with authority in the United States. In the United States, it's been cities that for many decades have been leading the innovations in terms of clean local economies, carbon emission reductions, and its linkages to health. It's important that we focus on cities, that cities be a focus, given the statistic that the ambassador described in terms of the percentage of the world population that is going to be living in cities. It's also important because cities and the actions in cities and the success of cities will make or break, in many ways, our ability to achieve our own goals, much less the additional efforts that will. Centers are expected by 2030 to add 1 million people and up to 1 billion cars, unless that trend is changed. And it is expected in the United States, based on current trends, that we will urbanize as part of city expansions more than has been built throughout history to this point, if we don't bend the curve, if we don't change the way that we build and consistently renew and try to always improve cities. Cities are also going to have to deal with a disproportionate amount of the impacts of climate change. 90% of cities in the globe are built along rivers and coastal plains, which are obviously particularly vulnerable to sea level rise and extreme weather. We just saw that in the Carolinas just weeks ago here in the United States. But it is within cities and the way that cities have operated and been leading the innovation on sustainability that we as a globe have a real promise to meet and exceed our goals. We have to address buildings. This is a fantastic, phenomenal building, not only beautiful, deeply green. Buildings account for, on average, among big cities in the world, 45% of all carbon emissions. In the United States, our challenge is that although cities issue building permits, state legislatures decide what are the criteria for building permits, and the federal government also has great influence on that. In some states, for example, you cannot put on solar panels on your commercial or residential structure. It's just simply not allowed by state government. In other states, such as Oregon, where I'm from, there are incentives to help make that happen. In addition to cities having to tackle the issue of buildings, obviously energy. It's about 65% of major cities in the globe. Energy is produced by fossil fuels. That's changing rapidly in some parts of the world, including the United States. A long ways to go. And transport accounts for 97% of the world's rising demand for oil. And again, as expected, double. A lot of places in the world accounts for 3% of greenhouse gases. Mayors and city councilors have to weave together not just the one-off win for sustainability, but multiple wins along the lines of the same effort. An example of stealing good ideas from Nordic countries, we in Portland brought back the streetcars. And part of my enthusiasm for streetcars and smart development associated with streetcars was visiting Helsinki. When I was mayor, we changed our garbage pickup radically. And I was inspired. I couldn't do exactly what Malmo does, but I was inspired by the ambitions of Malmo. And we went from every week garbage and every week recycling to every other week garbage, every week recycling, and adding organic materials, lawn debris, food scraps every week. I was probably one when we first implemented that, because it changed it changed people's choices and patterns significantly. I was probably America's most hated mayor for a good, I don't know, 2 months. Because was this the week I was supposed to put out the garbage or not? But it made all of us recycle even more intensely, and then picking up the food scraps and making sure that those were turned into compost significantly reduced the amount of garbage going to the landfill. In fact, in the 3 years that this change has been into place, it's down about 37%, which is a real reduction. And although it was unpopular at the time, when folks are surveyed on it now, it's actually more popular than when we started out and made the changes, because people like being part of the solution. And we're going to hear the discussion of some of that with our great panelists today. As good as what Portland is doing, long efforts at this, consistently rated one of the most sustainable cities in the United States and one of the most livable cities in the United States. Based on 1990 levels, even though with a big increase in population and a growing economy, we've reduced our greenhouse gas emissions in real terms 11%. And that's good. That's good for a city of our size. We're the 23rd largest city in the United States, but we can do much more. And so can other cities. And speeding up that cycle of innovation is key. It's key because it's estimated, a study done recently by C40, associated with the Compact of Mayors and the Stockholm Environmental Institute, came out with a study that I think just underscores the need to stay focused on cities, to not rest on our laurels and whatever accomplishments we are making ahead of maybe district, provincial, or national governments. Because they cite that cities risk unnecessarily locking in increased carbon emissions, that 1/3 of the world's remaining carbon budget could be determined, 1/3 of a carbon budget, sorry, I should say, for the next 20 years, so 1/3 of the carbon budget for the next 20 years, the decisions about it will be made on a city basis in the next 5 years. You build a building, you make a decision about a subdivision, that lasts for decades and decades. And so this problem is not a 2030 problem, it's not a 2050 problem, it's a problem in the next 5 years. But again, I think we have reason to be optimistic, and I think the Nordic countries and the cities in the Nordic countries and the success that the locales in Nordic country have had is a reason for hope and cautious optimism. We can also do this in a way, Portland has shown the way, the cities of Nordic country, other cities around the world have shown the way, that this can be done, and this morning's conversation, I understand, illustrated this as well. And as the President Obama likes to say, there's money to be made on cleaning up the environment. And it's going to take more businesses making more money in cities to help clean up the environment. There's got to be a profit motive about this. And that those that sort of pose this false choice of either are going to clean up the environment and be sustainable or have a successful city economically, and one you get a good economy and the other one you can only have a good economy and not a good environment, that's a false choice. And we've shown that. Cities you're going to hear from, the programs you're going to hear from have shown that as well. So I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to learn about from our speakers, and I'm looking forward to your questions and comments. So be thinking of the toughest questions you can think of, because that makes this the most interesting part of the discussion. So I'm really pleased to be here, and if we could have our speakers come up, and we'll move this podium out of the way and we'll get going. Thank you. While we're getting things together, my heartfelt apology in advance to all the speakers and the ambassadors and everyone else for mangling the pronunciation of names and cities. I apologize in advance for that. I'll do my best. All right. Welcome. Glad you're here. Let's start with Regner Hansen, Rinkoben Schirm.
That's me. Hello.
Oh, sorry. They told me I started at one end. I thought I'd start with you. All right.
Good guess.
Thank you. So you're located, the municipality is located in rural western part of Denmark, and it is the largest municipality in that area. Total population, about 57,000 in 2014. And by 2020, the city aims to produce within its boundary enough renewable energy to cover all the consumption by citizens and businesses, called Energy 2020. Part of that effort is a public-private partnership, getting citizens involved. It's an ambitious goal. How's it going?
Well, actually, it's going quite well. Until now, we have reached 56% of renewable energy compared to our consumption. And seen from that point of view, we are on goal. We managed to make this strategy in 2009, and the municipality, the government of the municipality were all in agreement and decided that we had to do something. You have to take into account that Denmark wants to be self-sufficient with the renewable energy by 2020. We thought to ourselves, why not go ahead of them, and then they can learn from us. So that's actually why we made this strategy, and it has just this year been revised, and we have made a new goals for the next period until 2018, and it looks quite good.
What are the key elements of the strategy?
The key elements is, well, first of all, it's quite ambitious, because all the industry's consumption, all the inhabitants and how for warming up houses, and all energy used for transportation, and even if you're going on and taking a plane to the south of Europe or to the US, it has to be into this pool.
Wow.
And
external travel is part of the accounting? Right.
So
y'all must not travel very much.
No, that's one solution, and another one is to fill up with gas in the neighbor municipality, of course.
We're just being honest here, folks.
But we are focusing on wind energy. We are focusing on bioenergy. You have to know that we come from an agricultural part of the world. We have the most animal units in Denmark. That means that we have the used biogas plants. And we have invented, at least in Denmark, we have invented our own model. We call it the RKSK model. And that's because compared to others, we are focusing on decentralized plants, because the main obstacle in biogas is transport. Transport makes it unprofitable if you have to drive in all the things that you have to put into the biogas plant. And therefore we are plowing pipes in the earth between farms normally 5 to 7 farms go together and build a biogas plant, and then they are plowing pipes into the biogas plant, and then the manure are pumped. And we can, until now, we can pump up to 10 kilometers of manure, and that's quite good.
The goals and the way you've approached meeting the goals strikes me as requiring an incredible amount of participation.
Yes.
And not just participation, but enthusiastic participation. How is that going, and what are some lessons you've learned from having that as a key part of success?
First of all, to make things happen, necessity for doing something else. And then to make things happen, we take into account that there must be some incentives. I have an example from far most part. It's a small fishing community, 100 years, but made their creative people of need get together and see. So it's very knowledge about carbon footprint and CO2 and all this, because people can't relate to that, but they can relate to what's coming into the pocket. As they said in this, and they actually made the wind turbine development themselves. They said, why say goodbye to a man in a big Mercedes with 20 million kroners in the trunk the day that we take over the turbines? We don't want that. We want to make the development ourselves. And they did. And that's one of the secrets behind this good interest of return.
Give us an example of an effort at enlistment and involvement and partnership that was particularly difficult and that you've overcome or are still seeking to overcome in terms of these partnerships.
Yeah, and another thing related to this.
No, just your overall plan.
Yeah. The government a couple of years ago made some arrangement that it was profitable to set up solar panels on rooftops. And it's a long story, but you have to take into account that the electricity is the most taxed power in the world. It's the electricity, very high taxed. So we pay 2.5 kroner per kilowatt. But then this solar incentive came up, and it was allowed to produce as much energy as your own consumption when you put up the solar panels on your roof. And then you can make a net, everything you produced was, you should only pay the difference to the power utility company. So that reduce that to $2.5 dollar or something.
Thank you very much. Learn more about Akureyri, Iceland, Sigurður, Inge, Threeth, Leithson. Sorry.
Fair enough.
I warned you.
Fair enough.
Located in northern Iceland, and it is the second largest urban area in the country. With a population of 18,000, the city has set itself an ambitious goal to achieve carbon neutrality. You have access to carbon-free energy for electricity and geothermal energy for domestic heating. Most of the emissions are created by traffic and food, and therefore your objective is focused on minimizing the greenhouse gas emissions from those sectors. Ambitious goal, again, how's it going? What are the key elements of your strategy?
Well, I'm not sure it's so ambitious because it's not that hard to get this target. And we actually focus more on the action than some goals. So it's more like an umbrella of project that has the same thing, that reducing the carbon footprint. How we do it is that we focus on the homes, and it's all about simplifying it. I mean, this climate change is very technical and heavy for common people, and they think it's like far away from them. So I think it's very important to simplify it. It's not that heavy. I mean, we are just taking carbon from downstairs and stuffing it up to the atmosphere. I mean, that's about it. And actually, I think we got some kind of clue that, I mean, the fossil fuels are very deep and hard to get. I think maybe because they were supposed to be there, stay there.
We should have paid
kind
attention
of
to that.
misunderstand that, yes.
Yeah.
So, but some people say, why are you focusing on the homes, not the big users like companies? But here's a shocking fact. I mean, the companies are not run by aliens. They are run by common people that own house and homes. So if you cannot have your homes quite clean and good, I don't think you have the interest to do it in the company. So actually, when we start this, the main interest comes from the company and the private sector. So I think, I mean, and also just by simplifying and give like people not only like saying you have to do better, also saying we are doing good. Saying we have 4 main sectors, and it's all about energy and bio-waste. We need energy to heat up the house. And in Iceland, you need to heat up the house around 364 days per year. And it's a lot of energy that goes to that sector.
That must be one happy day where you don't have to heat the house.
We celebrate a lot then.
Yeah.
And then we did that and fixed that, you could say, with our geothermal district heating. It was, though, a tough job, even though it's the cheapest house heating in the world. In the beginning, it was very hard. It was like, we're kind of lucky that, what was it, 30, 40 years ago, when people started going for the district heating plant, geothermal in Akureyri, it was very tough, and the mentality was just do it. And they did it. And now we are gaining with a very low-priced energy. Then we have the electricity, and then we get that from clean hydropower. So that sector is off as well. And then is the organic waste, and all organic waste is collected from all homes in Akureyri, putting into a combusting factory where the machines come from Finland. And
the ambassador thanks you for that. She has the latest model.
Yes,
she would like to tell you.
We need to upgrade it soon.
Some improvements over the past year. Yeah.
And so we have kind of 3 sectors of the way, and then it's the transport, which is quite difficult. But the municipality and this goal is to make sure we have all the infrastructure. That's why we dig down to the old landfill and got the old biogas to put on vehicles. And we are putting up the infrastructure for electric cars. And we are making biodiesel, small factory. And again, with projects like the biodiesel project, we now starting to collect the waste oil from all homes. Maybe not because that will make the huge difference in the production, but it connects people to the actual productions.
Right.
And then we put it on the buses, so people actually can feel when you put the oil and collect it that you actually did something good. So we try to connect people into this vision, and I think we have succeeded quite well in that.
And you offer, the locale offers free public transit, free access to public transit, and you mentioned you touched on briefly your efforts around transportation, carbon emissions from transportation. How is the free transit working, and overall you're meeting your goals in transportation?
It's going slowly. I mean, we are getting more and more electric cars and putting the biodiesel on the buses, and we also got biogas car from our local biogas production. So it's happening. We're also trying to get people to use the car less. That's important. I mean, it's not the biggest town in the world. People can actually walk more. So it will take time, but we have like a wild card that we can use, because we have like a carbon sequestration in our forestry. We are putting a lot of new trees down just to bind carbon. People here are very technical, trying to fix the carbon sequestration for companies. I mean, we have it already here, this tree here. You can see it's very heavy, and half of it is a carbon. And if it would not be there, it would be in the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. So we have been growing a lot of forestry, binding thousands of tons every year. So that will help us in the booking.
Great, thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Reghild Hummer. Hummer. Thank you. Senior Advisor on Climate and the Environment, the municipality of Arendal,
like the frozen pill.
Arendal, like the frozen pill, Norway. All right. Arendal is a town and municipality located in southern Norway with a population of 43,000. In 2008, the mayor of the city, with the support from the local United Nations Environmental Protection Office, proposed that the city be the first in Norway to have a climate-neutral administration, set up an ambitious goal to reduce emissions by 90% over a 10-year period, with 2007 as a base year. A large part of the reductions are being made through the city's sourcing of electricity from renewable energy. And again, how is it going? What are the key elements of this strategy?
Yes, we have now reached 78% reduction since 2007.
That's great.
The last bits are the hardest one to reach now, and the last 2 years we have left. But as you said, we buy only green electricity, and we have kicked out all the oil boilers, so we are now having only electric heating in the departments for the municipality. And that was a huge investment, of course, to change the heating systems, but it has been very cost effectively, because we have also saving money.
Right.
And we are measuring the heat now. We are controlling the heat in every classroom, in every room, in the elderly homes, and so on, in the gymnastic hall and in the city hall. And when the city council have their meeting, if the debate is too slow, we can just heat up, and then the discussion will will go better. No, so we are measuring, and what's measured is managed, and that's our result is very clear from having the emission inventory. Since 2008, we can see very, very effectively what we have used where. And then we can go directly to those who are not going in the right direction and put in actions. And the politicians, which I report to monthly because I have established this climate management group with the mayor and the deputy mayor and the chief of administration. And we only discuss climate and environmental issues. And when they learn about this and when they get into the details and then they can ask questions without being just hammered in the head if the question is too stupid, because they get answers and we can discuss and I can test how far can I go then with my proposals to do this even better. So we're quite there, but the hardest point now is to do something with our transport, because our cars, which we use in the municipality service, stands for 65% of our emissions. And we need more electric cars, of course, but we need also to reduce our number of cars. So we are also trying to make people to bike more in their work time, like doing electric bikes, because Arendal is quite hilly. So electric bike is a very good solution. And all the cleaners who clean the schools and everybody, they go in electric cars, so this can grow very easily. And perhaps we will reach it in 2020.
And your challenge on part of the vehicle purchase and transport is that you're on a 4-year cycle and you've got 2 years left to your goal, so that's why you might stretch beyond.
Yes, to do this public procurement, and public procurement is very important because the public sector uses a lot of money buying services and products. And without setting environmental standards when you buy, you don't do your job. And then Arendal has been very good at setting the standards and been quite tough in these negotiations. And we also try to get the neighboring cities along in this line, because Arendal is the major city in the county. And then we are so heavy that we push, and then they come and do the same. So that's very important.
And how is it working with the United Nations agency? That's not something I've had an opportunity to do. It would be very rare in the United States for a city to work directly with the United Nations agency. What were the pros and cons in that? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, it was the director actually of the UNEP office, which we are so lucky that we host in Norway, who actually launched this Kick the Habit with UNEP director coming into Arendal, and this was a big event. And the mayor then was quite tough and broad. She said, okay, let's go for it and be the first climate neutral city in Norway. And let's get on board and try this. And I love politicians, not because I'm married to one, but I really love politicians. And I like the brave ones who do the brave decisions. Right. And my job is then to make the mayor at any time tell the good story about Arendal and make the good example, because our neighboring cities are looking at Arendal, what we do. And they say, okay, well, let's see what Arendal is up to now. And if it's good, we copy. And I'm traveling a lot in Norway to tell this. And I'm also happy to be here, of course. But now we're starting to have conferences in Arendal, inviting other municipalities in and decision makers to listen to our story, because this is the way we have to exchange the experience.
And how did you finance some of the projects? And is there an expectation of seeing an actual return on investment and payback and a profit? I put that in quotation.
Yes. Also, we have the Department for Housing, then, who take care of all the buildings. They have set very broad goals. They say that we will save energy now by 20% in the next 2 years. And you mean, because they have to pay the bill of the energy use. And if they can manage to save energy, that's good business. And that's the politicians in the city council, they allow money also to this housing department. So it's a win-win situation. They do the job, but they have understood that they have to deliver also on climate and energy saving.
So you funded a lot of these projects. The departments or programs funded themselves, and then paid back with savings or other budget. Great, thanks. All right, we're now going to hear from Western Harbor, Malmö, Sweden. Charsten Torseke Hulten?
Not too bad.
Not too bad. All right. Architect, City Planning Department of Malmö. Malmö is the third largest city in Sweden. The population is 318,000, but together with Copenhagen, it constitutes the most densely populated area of Scandinavia. The industrial port area was turned into an ecological and architecturally interesting eco-city within a city and is now a national example of sustainable urban development and a district with a mix of housing, services, industry, workplace, education, recreation. Anything I missed in the general description, and what was your approach to designing this district? What's gone well? What sort of is a work in progress? And are there any absolute lessons from failure that we can learn from?
There are probably failures, but there are also things that turned out very well.
Right.
The area was where we're building ships, and the industry disappeared 1987, I think it was. And the city lost lots of jobs and things and changed into this knowledge city instead. And we had a lot of land that had been industrial that was going to be something better, used for something better. And we had a housing exhibition in 2001 with very high goals on using very little energy and making it into a very green part of the city. And there were very many developers who were allowed to build houses, and some of them didn't need any energy to be heated. They were passive houses. I don't know what that's in English, and some used less energy, and all the energy for this part of the village was produced for this village, and it was renewable. They built a windmill in another part of the harbor that produced quite a lot of energy. There were aqua under the ground there, where they could get heat and cooling energy from, and solar energy, of course, that was used. And this was built 14 years ago, which is quite a long time ago, and it was only a small part of the Western Harbor, and we've gone on, continued to explore it, and it's been done block by block or part by part, and it has been done in a dialogue between the people from the municipality or the city and the developers, and we have been working together in groups where we have been giving each other knowledge and challenges, so that the developers had to say, we want to do this, which is special in our house. And people from the city has helped to get, and by being transparent, we have educated one another. And in these projects, when they have been finished, you have to be able to measure how much energy has been used. And it has not only been done the first year, but they have gone on following it up. Some of them has been good, some of them has not been as good as expected, but by going on and learning from the failures, you can go on and it ends up being better and better. And now we use the knowledge from the Western Harbor in Hyllie, for example, which is part of Malmö, built around the railway station, where we have the bridge and the tunnel from Denmark, Copenhagen, the trains coming in. And there we have a climate contract with the energy company, the sewage company, and the developers, so that they will have very high energy standards. And Hyllie will be 100% renewable energy. And so I think it already is. The city of Malmö will be all the renewable energy of 2030, whereas the estates owned by the city will be 100% renewable energy in 2020. We're almost there.
That's great.
And we work also with the green, making it, we have a major plan, I should say, that say we are going to build a dense mixed green and short distance city.
Right.
We have no fjords, we have no hills. It's been farming area, and Western Harbour has been, you put waste material into the sea and make land out of it. So we don't have hills and things in between. We have got parks, but still it's a walkable city, and the suburbs are close to the city, within the city. So we're building it more dense, not to get further out into the farmland, which is the best in Sweden at least. And green, because of many reasons. Green is healthy. Green roofs, green walls help you to cool the house. You need less air condition when it's getting warmer. And the soil where the plants are growing will slow down the stormwater and the water from the rains. And you get shadow under the trees, and you get nice surroundings to meet in, because we want a healthy city. And we worked for a long time with a sustainable city from an ecological point of view, economical point of view, and the challenge nowadays is the social point of view. To work, to have a better life for everybody to live in this
I'm also,
part of the city.
having visited a couple of times, struck by the architecture,
Yes.
the way that it's laid out, very unique. That was clearly a high priority.
Of course.
And you had private partners. Roughly how much of the overall development was publicly financed versus privately financed? And did you have formal agreements? Was it highly regulated? When you did the plan, were the owners involved? Did they obviously had to adhere to a plan, but like that partnership, tell us more about the partnership with the private sector.
Well, it has been built together with the private sector, and in Hyllie everything is owned by the city. So when somebody's going to buy land from the city to build there, they have to live up to certain standards.
Gotcha.
The climate contract and also architecture and design, what it's going to be like. Sometimes we have competitions, sometimes we agree on what to do. We try to divide the blocks with several people building so that the parts you build are not too big. Mm-hmm. And that way try to make it a scale that is easy to understand and to appreciate as a human being moving around in the city. And part of the Western Harbour is privately owned. Mm-hmm. And there we have agreement. We sit down and we have a dialogue deciding what values do we want into this part of the city, what do we want to happen here, and how will we achieve that? Meeting places, public shops, cafes, things like that on the ground floor in every house so that it's safe to walk in the area. It's not empty during daytime when everybody's at work. And we also want offices and dwellings mixed so that it's people in the area all the time to make it safe to live there and to be there. And that's also part of the agreement we make. But we don't just say do this. We have a dialogue and we try to think about what's in it for everybody. So it's kind of a win-win.
Thank you. Next we're going to hear from Mobility and Service. Rain Hermans, Head of Strategic Programs of Tekes?
Yes.
Finland. I got one title right today.
We practiced it before.
That's right. 23 key organizations in Finland have partnered to create the first ever mobility as a service operator in traffic. The goal of the new entity is to offer tailor-made traffic services to consumers based on their individual needs. MAS will make it possible to combine private and shared traffic services, demand-based traffic services, and scheduled traffic services, and pay everything in one app. The pilot project is based in Helsinki, capital of Finland. I found the description online. This is really interesting. Tell us more about the program and how long it's been up and how it's going.
Yes, we started the joint program of Mobility as Service together with our Ministry of Transport and Communications a year and a half ago. And when we just put it into context of clean tech and climate change and everything, we started with companies. It was a big workshop in Finlandia House in Helsinki, and there was Bill Ford in a video screen just kind of stating that now, today, we have 1 billion cars in the world. And if the trends continue as they are like now, then in the coming decades, we will have 4 billion cars. And you don't even have to visit Beijing to state that this is impossible. It will not happen. It will not happen. Never. And so he stated that Ford Motor Company will not sell cars in the future. They will sell services. And we were starting kind of trying to search for the opportunity. That what does he mean? That how can we continue from this? And interestingly, when we talked to some major international telecom operators, they said there is a bigger market opportunity in mobility and transportation than there is in telecommunications. And the basic fact is that 80% of expenditure and cost related to transport is related to owning a car. If you take into account depreciation, maintenance, other costs, it's really, really expensive. And if people start buying mobility services instead owning their own car, there will be a big market rupture, big opportunity. And so we started kind of considering and visualizing what could be this environment in the future. And we started with 15 people, 15. We kind of selected champions from the ICT industry, even some were before related somehow to transport system, but I never done any business with transportation. And after that evening, we had a vision that we shared with everybody in the ministry, with the industry, even internationally. And we said that it's about providing door-to-door services without the need to own a car. We want to collaborate with companies, with ministries, with local transport operators who are willing to act in an open ecosystem. And so that was kind of a starting point where we wanted to attract companies that are active in digital world. And so after this vision, they got interested in. And after that, we just wanted to find the cities most interested into this kind of initiative. And we realized that Helsinki is one, because they have a strategy where they want to become carless or private carless city or downtown Helsinki in 10 years. And kind of an old world, an old school tradition is that how to manage that change, how to restrict, how to conduct new road tolls or something like that. And the new world is how to help and enable people to get so easy to use, easy to access services that they are willing to use these services instead of driving their own car. And that's the big market opportunity. And so then, in the beginning of this year, we launched an open call for mobility operators. And that is kind of a two-stage call. First, we wanted to ask them to pre-study the whole new ecosystem. What could be the business model? Who could we partner with? And then in stage 2, they just propose where they want to demonstrate their services. And now, instead of having only Helsinki, we decided that it has to be intercity or within any city type of approach. Otherwise, we just locally solve some issues that are not scalable. And what we wanted to get new companies attracted, and now we have 5 or 6 mobility operators starting their demonstrations this fall, including TeliaSonera, which is one of the biggest telecom operators in Scandinavia and Baltic states. We have some startups which are interestingly owned by very big transport operators who are active internationally, and some startups who are just like one-man show. So we wanted to open the race in the sense that because we cannot guess who will win the whole contest.
So the obvious Uber question.
Yes.
Is Uber, you have, I assume, private for hire taxis in Helsinki. You've got transit. I don't know if Uber exists or not, but is Uber in Helsinki right now?
Yes, that is a good question. You know, we kind of, our taxi union in the beginning of this whole saga was a little bit hesitating that should we be a part of this? What is this, by the way? And why should we open our kind of payment engine systems and real-time location systems to these guys? Why should we? And then Uber came into Finland and they started Uber Finland. And I got a call from taxi union that, hey, how can we get part into this? So now we are expecting the call from Helsinki Region Transit Authority. Because, you know, the next stage will be that taxi sharing will provide so inexpensive rides in Helsinki that, you know, it's even cheaper than buying per time ticket from HSL.
How do you see the rest of you, how do you see an approach like this, its prospects for being successful in your locales? You're all dealing with transportation issues.
Every time there's money in it, then you can work together.
Yeah, and one more thing what we found very important is that, to be honest with you, I want to be honest, you know, the first mass demonstration was conducted by Ubigo in Gothenburg, Sweden, 2 years ago. And that was kind of it involved 70 families. So they got rid of their second car and got these services, and they manually kind of operated the whole thing. But that was really the first one. But then what we realized that we want to collaborate with them. So we launched 2 weeks ago in Bordeaux, in Intelligent Transport System Congress, Mass Alliance, which is European-wide, based on the idea that we want to standardize these services and digital interfaces and this platform as GSM Alliance standardized GSM technology and those platforms in the early days. And so we also have kind of an idea that we have common Nordic markets, that any company at this stage who is demonstrating in Finland mass services, they can go to Sweden and vice versa. So that's kind of a NMT GSM type of idea that we have common markets.
So you have plans to take over all Nordic nations with this service?
Europe, world. We want to collaborate. We want to collaborate with any...
Collaborate?
Yes, any company, any city which is willing to scale and utilize kind of scaled services, not like... Okay, you asked about Uber. You know, Uber is different in the sense that they work in a silo.
Right.
They have their own fleet. But this idea is more like Uber intercity. We want to utilize and deploy all the vehicles, you know, starting with public transit,
Right.
railroads, local buses, metros, taxis.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating. You had your hand up?
Yes, I thought we're working in a very different way with mobility management in the Western Harbour, where we have very few parking places per flat, because the developer has to say, we put money so that for 5 years you're part of a carpool. You can get a free ticket for transportation, public transportation. There is an experiment with 2 houses that have no parking lot at all. They have parking for a few guests and some disabled people if necessary. But they spend as much money on making facilities for bikes instead, so that you can go by bike in the city, which is very interesting. You can have there is even a hotel where it's a bike with every hotel room that they had got permission to build last week, I think it was. And they have a pool of transportation bikes, you know, these Danish ones with a big box in front, where you can carry cargo or a few kids, and parking lots for that kind of bikes, and also so that you have a pool of bikes. And the employee building this house spend as much money on bike facilities as you usually do for cars. Say.
Does this
it's
apply?
An experiment.
What are your reactions to this in your local community?
Well, I think the way Icelanders think, I think we have a private car ownership way into the future. What I'm very interested in it's how we can try to explain for people the real use of the car. I mean, they overestimate the usage. I mean, Akureyri, they use it maybe 3 to 10 kilometers per day, but when we introduce electric cars, they are so worried about the range.
Right.
It's the getaway car syndrome. It's like everybody wants to rob a bank at least once time in their lifetime, so they need like 400 kilometers of range, even though they never use it. So I think that's to introduce. I mean, there will be different techniques and tailor it for each town or each community. But this idea of this shared mobility is very nice, and I think it can be adapted almost everywhere.
In the cities, at least, not in the countryside.
It's a difference being a smaller and very dense populated area than a town, of course. I'm struggling to have a bus 4 times an hour into the city center of Arendal. We don't have that all day. So that's my struggle, to get the county level who owns the public transport to have a proper bus service. But of course, we want the people to move more by bike or walking. We make maps which you can find out, oh, it takes only 7 minutes to reach that point. I could do walking instead of getting my car out and drive there. So this is the way we are achieving this. But we have this shared car apps and things for people who commute over a longer distance, and the bus doesn't go. So that's an option.
Is there, in this concept, do you see enough of that incentive you talked about in describing some of the elements of your success? Does this have the personal incentive for uptake in your area enough?
You have to rephrase the question because I didn't understand it.
You talked about that in order to create change, you have to have partnerships and incentives. People need to want to do something.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is a compelling enough example for your locale to pursue?
It's difficult to use in the countryside because we have other challenges. We made a study in our municipality a couple of years ago, and we don't have that many workplaces inside the community. So people who have to work far away, they are in average driving at least 150 kilometers per day. So and the infrastructure seen from a bus's point of view or railway is not existing in the countryside.
Gotcha.
So
You had a thought?
Yes, you know, we also investigated the same challenge that in the sparsely populated regions there are some challenges, at least in the demonstration phase 1. But later on, we realized that we want to integrate these new types of vehicle technologies into this test bed and demonstration sites. So autonomous driving and, of course, electric vehicles even today, they provide a real good incentive to save costs of these mobility operators, because the variable costs of autonomous vehicles and electric vehicles are close to zero. So then in the near future, it will become possible that you can get rid of your third or second car even in the countryside, because nowadays they are just waiting for you on your yard like 99.5% of the time, just expecting that when this guy wants to take off to the town. And so if the vehicle can kind of return itself to the closest railway station with almost like zero cost, then it makes sense.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
We're now going to take questions from the audience. So.
We still have time for the panel.
Oh, we do? We're gonna mix it up. Do we need a mic? But I wanted to give microphone warning. Do we have microphones? Okay. So while we're getting the microphones, I didn't mean to throw there. Very enamored with cars. We have in Portland, we've worked hard to build out a system so that we have the highest percentage of trips by bike of any per capita of any city in the United States. We're the #1 walking city, and it's been, and we're nonpartisan in the United States. You're elected, except for some of the big cities. You don't run on a partisan platform. You run without any party affiliation. Portland is a liberal or progressive city, but still it's been hard at times to get people to see the benefit of the trip not taken by cars. You mentioned afford to get the deep reductions you're going to have to get to meet your sort of share of emissions out of the transportation sector. Wherever you're at, you're going to have to even do better. Today to achieve greater carbon emission reductions in the transportation sector. Okay.
We have to reduce our number of cars, and of course, car share. We are planning for a car pool for the employees who work downtown in the city council base for a platform for when they start cars and plan their meetings to go off. So that.
Yes.
And also we have a way for these mobility operators. So we are now collaborating, for instance, with the city of Tampere, which is kind of opening their data. And so that also provides a real reason to open the data, because usually what I've seen is that there are only kind of technical discussions to open the data, which format, which APIs and stuff like that. And so it has to be based on the real need to procurement something more effectively. And these are kind of interesting things that I think that we could collaborate, that innovative public procurement is kind of needed anywhere. And it would be really much more effective if we can find kind of many cities that have same kind of
economies of scale.
Yeah.
Try a different sort of context. Did you have your hand up?
Well, you said something about not necessary
trips you don't have to take because you're getting what you need just by walking a couple blocks.
I thought about two things. And one is it's not only the big city Malmö is in Skåne, which is quite a populated area with many small cities and villages. And from a regional point of view, they are also growing next to the railway stations. So you build a good network, and then the rural areas can grow as well. But I was thinking about schools and the preschools in Sweden, where all parents drive their kids to school because there's so much traffic next to the school that they can't let the kids walk there because it's dangerous. And the dangerous thing is the parents driving the kids, which is therefore when the schools and the kindergartens are growing bigger and bigger because there's a shortage of them. And now we take away the possibility to park very near. So you have to park your car and walk for 100 meters or something to deliver your child, because everybody can't stop in the street right outside, because then they stop each other. And that's a question of education. And the Department of Streets in our city use quite a lot of energy on educating people how to travel in an efficient way. When can you walk? How much faster is the bike, an electric bike, and things like that?
Figure out what to do about it. So the sort of digging into the data, what are the trips? How can they be trip chained or aggregated? I mean, that's going to be required of cities across the world. Yes, sir.
I was just commenting on this driving kids to the school and kindergarten. That's an urban issue, because in the countryside we have been bicycling for 100 years, and we still do. My kids have have cycled themselves into school and home again, and they could do that in a safe way, because the density of traffic isn't that much by us.
All right, your questions. I saw a hand up over here. Yes. They'll turn it on.
Hi, Isabel Hogbrink, Climate Change Department of the World Bank. I have 3 questions. First of all, I'm interested in knowing exactly how the app works. If you could walk us through step by step. There's similar apps here in DC where you say where you want to go to, from where and to where, and it tells you what type of public transportation you can take. But is basically your app that you're adding on Uber and maybe even private cars, car sharing, to that system? And my other question is, and if so, I mean, that app could easily be used in the city. And so my second question is there anyone from DC government here? And if not, why not? And my third question to Ragnhild is, when you say that you switched from oil-based boilers to electrical boilers, what was that electricity mix like? And where did you get that electricity from? Because if that's based on fossil fuels, then it doesn't really make a difference. Thank you.
Let's start with boilers, and then we'll move to the app.
Yeah, of course, Norway is a hydropower country. So we have about 98% hydropower, and we have to import some of the peaking points from Germany, but with the green certificate, that's guaranteed for only renewable energy. Yeah, of course.
App.
The biggest difference between those apps already in the marketplace and this new type of mobility as a service app is that that new app enables the payment to any transport mode. So the whole transport chain can be delivered. And so there is also kind of feature in different locations, feature of roaming and clearing the payment when you enter to a new region with different local transport operators. So that's why it is so important that we define those APIs and data models in the beginning. And in addition to those mobility operators, we have funded also some other kind of generic technology providers like IQ Payments and Western Systems, which provide this payment engine, which can be based on PayPal, credit cards, anything like that, which is universal method of payment. Because for some weird reason, in transportation, especially in public transit, there is kind of tendency to reinvent the money in any individual location. So they have kind of digitalization for local transit authorities have so far been like offering electronic ticket, which is kind of local money. You already have PayPal, web payment systems, you already have global credit cards, you already have the money. Why to reinvent the wheel? So this is kind of a biggest difference. And that's why telecom operators are kind of natural partners, because they know it all about roaming and clearing the payments in different locations.
So not just location wayfinding, but actual procurement of mobility and being able to pay the various different options, whichever one you choose, and for that all to work out.
Yes.
Other questions? Yes.
Is teleworking part of any of your strategies to reduce traffic, et cetera?
Telecommuting, teleworking, working from home?
For us, we will also look into more web meetings and telephone conferences instead of traveling. That will be one step to reduce our need of transport for meetings.
Yeah, but that's a lot easier if you know each other. If you don't know each other, then it's a natural meeting face-to-face is better.
It's not only working at home, but there are a meeting point, you could say, an office in Malmö where you have offices, ordinary offices at the top, and further down there are small offices. You can rent an office with 4 workplaces and you rent it by month, or you can rent just a seat and a desk per hour. And lots of people can come there to meet or to work for a short time when they work at home otherwise. And it's called Media Evolution Center, where people meet. And I think working at home, of course, but the meetings are very important. So working in smaller offices where you share the place in the office and also where you can work at the same place as you meet is something that is tried in different kinds of offices and places.
Here in DC, we have the WeWork. It's actually it's a East Coast private sector, totally private. These kinds of shared offices you can rent, short-term, long-term, growing in popularity. Other questions for our panel? Yes.
I wanted to thank everyone for this amazing conference. Everyone's ideas were remarkable, but I must say the finish is pure genius. It's not because we're here now. It's pure genius. And I would suggest taking it to LA, and if it makes it there, it makes it anywhere. It'll be unbelievable. It'll take the world over and change our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. A question over here?
Just one reference to that, please.
Yeah.
You know, one interesting thing was that
you should ask her for an investment.
Yeah, we hired a 24-year-old graduate from the Aalto University of Technology, and I have never seen any individual master's theses that have been referred in over 70 countries. In the media, in the kind of a public media all over the world. And Sonja Heikkilä, my colleague, is working with Tekes, and it was really kind of a nice coincidence, if you will, you know, in a way that also generated kind of a attraction and kind of a many phone calls from even international companies that can we get part into this mass somehow. So there are many nice coincidences as well, and I just want to remind that demonstrations are just partially started, so we just have to deliver.
Thank you very much. My name is Mette Lassesen. I'm from a company called Ramble Environ. I'm originally from Copenhagen, but now based in DC. So in Copenhagen, we're also working with a lot of the same issues that here. I'm interested a little bit in the human behavior part of your considerations. It seems like, for instance, from Malmö, but also some of the other places, that you are trying to think in, how can we get people to change their behavioral patterns? And I was wondering if you are sort of really looking at some of these issues from an anthropological point of view, studying more in depth, or having someone study for you how humans behave and what makes them take the certain choices. And I'm asking because, for instance, we have had discussions with the city of Copenhagen on, for instance, on transportation and transportation patterns, that you gave the example of the schools. Everyone in the city of Copenhagen, all the schools open up at the same time. Everyone has to be at the office at the same time, for all the public institutions. And it means you have these peak hours where everyone transports themselves, which creates congestion. So we said, well, why don't you just have half of the schools open up half an hour later or an hour later, and some of the public officials meet half an hour later, or things like that. So sort of to work with the, also those kind of structural issues and human behavioral patterns that makes people, transport themselves, for instance, from point A to point B at a certain time. So have you thought of anything like that, or are you working with any institutions or researchers to look at those kind of things?
Great question.
Yes, we are actually doing that in Ringkøbing. The schools, some schools starts 10 to 8, some 8 o'clock, and some 10 past 8. So we have done that for 20 years.
Others looking at sort of analytics research around human behavior?
We haven't come that far, but we are a very innovative municipality. We have won prizes from the government of being innovative. So, and our city planner, Kjersti's colleague, he has actually suggested that for our city, that the schools, for instance, should start at different hours just to decrease the queue. We don't have that queue actually, because we are so few people, but there are some queue. And it hasn't really been caught up yet, but we are discussing it. And we also have had room for discussing the possibility for our research center to follow that possible process. So we are discussing it, but we haven't.
What's the hesitation?
Well, I think people don't think we are big enough, or that's not easy, that's successful. Other places have somebody tried it, and but as being as innovative as we say we are, I think we should try follow up that. Mm.
I'm pretty sure we have done something like that, but it's in the gatukontor, street office, and I haven't been in Malmö working long enough to be able to say something, but we do a lot of research and work together with the university in Malmö in questions like that. So I suppose something is done, but I have to go home and find out if you want to know more. Because they work a lot with mobility management and how to teach people to behave in other ways and make them do it.
Yeah, and I was thinking that, reflecting the LA case, I was thinking that when we started the whole MAS program, Jukka Salmi from this place was also initiating kind of a US-wide survey that what's going on with the mobility in the United States. And it looks like that we have to realize that we cannot make the change like this. That we have to allow, even if we talk about climate change, we have to allow that if you want a family to use electric vehicle, which is maybe not like Tesla, then we have to admit that the caveman have to drive Mustang V8 once a month or something. So the whole idea is that if you give something, you get rid of something. That it's kind of a game that there are many kinds of business models. So why I kind of got enthusiastic of MAS was that any kinds of services can be plugged in. It's not like kind of restricted to public transit or something. There can be kind of ideal world, but there can be V8 type of world included. There can be a CEO who just pays kind of a monthly subscription of $3,000 and have a limo, you know, whatever. So it's not like one size fits all.
But I think talking about human behavior, because we have like 3 small towns here, and why we have small towns, it's because we have done the research, but it's definitely easier to get small communities to do something together. And I think we have to research that more. Why is that easier? Because, I mean, technically it's not easy. Like for Akureyri, it's not just a micro-city. We have everything, like a hospital and university and industry and fisheries and agriculture, and everything, just like every big city. So it's more that if you're in a smaller community, I think you care more how the community as a whole is going forward. So maybe it's because it's your brother that is building the biogas factory, or your friend from primary school is working in the recycling business. I don't know, but it seems that people are more willing to go together as community in some direction when they are smaller.
Yeah, that's right. And we have a saying in Ringkøbing, and that's find the blacksmith. And why are we saying that? That is because in the 70s, when we had the first energy crisis, the whole community in Denmark was changing from oil burners to district heating. And the blacksmith who was servicing the oil burners couldn't understand why the heck shall we transport warm water in the street, and then I'm out of business. But then he saw the light, because he could do all these installations. And that's why we're saying we have to find the blacksmith. We have to find the person who is engaged in making the change. Then things happen by itself. And that's easier in a smaller community.
I think it's quite easy in a larger community as well if the politicians are sure and everybody wants to go in the same direction and are convinced that this is possible and you cooperate.
Yes, and then a small incentive is not bad.
I think it's a really important question, and traveling around the world and talking to cities and being part of conferences like this, I think there are 2 areas where traditional planning has to grow and evolve, and one is around behavioral analytics, consumer behavior, and the other is around economics, market economics. On top of I think the Nordic countries are ahead of the United States tradition in looking at some of these things, but I think the world cities have a long ways to go. I'm surprised at how often, again back in Mexico, how little surveying they've done on why people make the choices that they make. I think there's a lot of room to improve upon the existing systems that we have, transportation systems and otherwise. And your efforts are going to drive a lot more insight into why people make the choices they do. Great question. Other question? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Charlie Warren. I'm a producer of public radio programs here in the United States of America. And the talk about electronics is terrific. Electric cars, electric trains, electric streetcars, all this sort of thing. So much of our lives revolve around electricity. And I get very concerned that we're forgetting about where this is all coming from. What is going to happen when we have to make more nuclear power plants, when we have to pump more stuff into the air to get more electricity? We can't have wind farms everywhere as much as we'd like to. What does the future bring to us because of what we're now creating? Is there a danger that we are avoiding looking at? Where's that nuclear waste going to go? and all the rest?
Yeah, well, we have no nuclear in Iceland, but I have to say, because we're in a Nordic perspective, that one of the thing that the Nordic countries have in common, that we have very clean grid, very carbon-free electricity productions, like 100% in Iceland, 100% in Norway, little less in Denmark, but way over, what, 60-70% in Finland. So there's a very carbon-free electricity grid in the Nordic countries. So that's why it's wise to focus on like electrification of the transport. And it's not only quite carbon-free, there are huge potentials left for harnessing renewables in the Nordic countries. So I don't think it's as much threat, at least for the Nordic countries, but I see what you're getting. And of course, we should focus more on the energy efficiency, which is always the cheapest way to get somewhere.
They'll agree.
I was about to say, we started there using less energy for heating and cooling our houses and less energy for transporting less people and less things. I think that was the start for the debate, wasn't it?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Hi, Doug Midland from OPIC, Overseas Private Investment Corporation. And I've noticed a theme generally around individual practices, so I'm not surprised to see the human behavior question constantly coming up. But I'm interested to see, there's obviously, that creates disruption in a certain way, right, amongst vested interests or public policy. And I'm just wondering how each of you have seen address that challenge if it ever came up.
Can you explain what you asked?
Can you restate your question with the microphone closer?
Yeah.
With the microphone closer.
Absolutely, no.
Closer.
No, okay, perfect.
Part of it, I couldn't hear everything you were saying.
Sure. So you started it off the conversation that we needed to have an economic incentive to be imposing a number of these changes, and that can obviously be done, but it is also disruptive to a certain extent in terms of vested interests, current industry practices, or public policy. And I'm just wondering how each of you, in affecting your own change in your local municipalities or abroad, have addressed that as a challenge and helped develop more positive policy, whether that be local government or federal government, to be a bit more impactful.
So how do you? The way I would summarize that really good question is how do you successfully overcome vested interests, the status quo, the existing, whether it's economic vested interest or political vested interests that are, they're doing just fine with the way things are. How do you overcome that?
Okay, let's kind of divide the question into two parts, that private sector and public sector. And with the private sector, or let's put it this way, those actors that financially somehow deploy the system, like taxis, taxi companies, local transport operators. What we realized in the beginning was that we didn't want a local operator to run the show, because if the local public transit authority starts to operate the whole system, then it doesn't differentiate from any other city, because those guys want to do it anyways. So that's why we wanted to open it. So we said that we are not going to fund any mobility operator which is owned by local authorities or cities, because they don't have any incentive to scale it to other regions or other countries. So it has to be commercially viable model. And that was kind of one side. Another side, we talked about Uber and taxi union. That's kind of another example that we don't want to push anybody. We just let things happen. If people don't or companies don't want to participate, that is their problem. Then we take somebody else, and then when other guys realize that, hey, maybe there is some potential, then they come in. And another important thing was that our Ministry of Transport and Communications was on board in the beginning. So they are kind of a backbone. They have promised to change, even temporarily, the regulation in our test sites.
And if I could just clarify to make sure I'm understanding that when you're talking about us and them, you're talking about MOS, sort of the core, the more technology. When you looked at sort of where to locate the core technology with like the local transit authority, you chose not to, you wanted it independent so it can work with all those,
yes,
not intentionally or unintentionally sort of be unduly influenced if you housed it with an existing.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So there are different layers. There are those providers of physical transportation. And then there's providers of digital platforms, and they can be big companies even. And then there are providers of these apps. So you know, there's kind of because we don't know who can provide the solution that really benefits the end user. Then we cannot kind of build this kind of one model. We didn't want to architect it like this is the model. So we want those commercial businesses to do it and test it.
So you're getting through the vested interest by creating your own sort of independent hub.
Yes.
And they can choose to work with you or not.
But
that's one way to get through the vested
interest. That's right.
interest.
And I think that related to smart city, the interoperability is the biggest question between cities, right? That is always the challenge. So at the same time, we have funded 2 university projects that deal with this and tackle this issue. My Mobility Factory in University of Tampere and then Intercity project in VTT. So they deal only with the interoperability between different demonstrations and cities.
So other folks success or struggle with vested interests?
I can give an example on how to regulate human behavior. In Denmark, cars are heavily taxed. And they are heavily taxed in 2 ways. When you buy them, you have to pay 3 times more than other places in the world. And then to drive them, you have to pay what's called
road tax.
Road tax.
Yeah, it's a kind of road tax. But in the old days, the road tax was calculated on basis on how heavy your car were. But now it's how little emission coming out of the pipe behind the car. And that has made a downsizing of cars in a way that we haven't seen before. The last 10 years, we are all driving in small cars now because it's cheaper.
Yes, sir, in the back.
Thank you so much for your interesting and thoughtful presentations. Abraham Avilor, Foreign Agricultural Service. Portland is known for its heavy rainfall and the Nordic countries for their long winter. What are the prospects for solar as a source of energy? And also, does there any coordination exist among the Nordic countries to coordinate all these wonderful ideas that presented by the panel? Thank you.
Solar uptake, yes.
Yeah, we are focusing heavily on district heating. And that means that we're transporting this hot water in between houses. And the district heating is owned by ourselves. It's not owned by the government or it's not owned by the municipality, but by ourselves. And that means that it's feasible for us to put on solar panels to heat up the water. It's feasible for us to use electricity from wind turbines to heat up the water when the cost of electricity are low. And it's feasible for us to put pipes in the sea to take out the heat with these what is it? What are they called?
Heat pumps.
Exchange, yeah. Heat exchangers.
Yeah, heat exchangers. And when they are powered from wind turbines, we don't pay tax because we are supplying ourselves with power to these heat exchangers, and then it runs by itself, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper. But that's only because we have this district heating.
Well, it's easy for Iceland to tackle the question about solar energy. If we would focus on that, we couldn't have any Christmas. So, because it's totally dark then. But talk about that, the winter time, we have to focus more on the efficiency there, because both in Iceland and Norway, we have these hydropower plants, and frozen water, it's a little bit tough to use that to create electricity. So we have to try to reduce the energy consumption during the hardest times, the winter times. So that is both for heating and lights, and LED is very important in that, to try to get the consumption down, so it's easier on the hydropower.
Yeah, and then we'll go back.
But Norway then is very envious on Sweden, because Sweden and Denmark has a lot of activities to support the use of solar, and Norway has very, very cheap electricity, so there's no money for helping up more solar. But that's my project then, to make Arendal a sun city, because we have as much sun as northern Germany, and in Germany now it's 6% of the energy use is from solar, so of course this could be a big business, and we are even developing the solar panels down south where I live, and they're making them more efficient. So why don't we use them ourselves? That's my next big issue.
Yeah, I would just like to comment on this, because when we are governmental regulated in a way that we have regulations for how to build a house, and these are getting heavier and heavier, these regulations. So now when we build a new house today, the walls have to be at least 40 centimeters filled with insulation. And that is because we have to save the energy in the wintertime. And we can heat up the concrete and use the heat from the concrete to heat the house, understanding in that way that the sun is heating up the concrete inside the house, and then the concrete will keep warm until next day when the sun shines.
You had a comment?
Yes, I would like to see kind of a competition between these different sources of dispersed energy production, and in a sense, I think the solar energy question is related to energy storage. So even there, kind of how can we, together as Nordic countries, how could we demonstrate new types of energy storage technologies and systems? Because I think that's a kind of a critical question that you know, sun shines sometimes in Finland, even in Helsinki, but you know, then how can we really store that energy in a way that when we need it, we can use it? So that's.
So we also have to take in account that even though the Nordic countries produce a lot of green electricity, it's also quite cheap. So it's also just business related. It's hard for solar energy to be established because we are producing as green electricity much cheaper. So it's also just about business.
Well, about this storage, then I have to come back to district heating again, because the solar panels in the district heating system in Ringkøbing can heat up water, and we can store water in insulated tanks that can heat the city up for 20 days without energy. And all this water is heated up by the sun in solar panels. So we have a buffer on 20 days.
So you just need sun every 20 days?
Yes.
We'll get on
That's something
that.
for Finland.
Well, we've run out of time. I want to please join me in thanking our great panel and the discussion. And also thank the ambassador and her team for this great venue and hospitality. And thank all the countries, all the ambassadors that have helped put on Nordic Day, and hope that this is the first annual Nordic Day. I think it's been fantastic and continues to inspire the world with your great innovative work, in this case, on climate action. So thank you all very much. Thanks, good job.